Weirdly, I can only share my screen with you all, apparently as a decision before I go live, but that's okay. I will sort of, this is going to be a shorter version of a workshop that I give away for free, but because I always like making things special, and Laura made this available to me, I have something really, really special for you all by the time we're done here today that I've never done for anybody before. So hopefully that'll be exciting. If you want to learn more about what I do in general, I have a book coming out called The Abstinence Myth. And if you go to www.theabstinenceMyth.com, you can get the first chapter for free right now while we're waiting for the presses to finish printing it. It's kind of incredible how long it takes for a book to get printed after you're done writing it. So that's one thing. And then Ignited Recovery, and I will put that in here. www.ignitedrecovery.com/soda is that special offer that I've gotten prepped for you all. And don't go there right now because you won't even understand what the hell it means, but you can go there after. So again, really, really excited. I want to introduce you all to my concept, Ignited Recovery, and how I see it as the path to move forward and beat addiction. And when I say beat addiction, I don't mean, you know, struggle with it for the rest of your life in hopes that one day it'll get better, but I mean beat addiction forever so that it's something you don't deal with ever again. I'd love to know, just to start, if you can tell me what it is specifically each one of you is struggling with, but also whether the concept of being able to have something that actually allows you to beat your struggles forever sounds like something you're interested in. Like if it sounds like something that's exciting to you on the front end, I would love to hear about that. Okay. So I'm assuming that it is. I'm assuming you guys are all in Club Soda because you're struggling maybe primarily with alcohol, but you're struggling with the self-control issue, right? You're struggling with this inability to handle alcohol and or other things in your life in the way that you've wanted to. And I totally get that. You're going to learn about my own personal experience and how I get that. But you're going to learn about so many things today, so many tools, so many practical tools that I've come up with over 15 years of doing this work to help people who are struggling exactly in the same way. And I'm going to start you out with a story, and I don't know how many people remember this because it was a little while ago, but I'm going to take us back to 240 BC and a guy named Aristophanes. And you know, Aristophanes lived in a time with obviously no GPS and obviously no Google Maps or any of those sorts of things, but he was brilliant, and he had heard this rumor that on a certain day of the year, if you stood upright in the middle of the street, the sun would cast no shadow on you. And he was really interested in how that might be. And so he tried it. And there was still a shadow. And so he went on through this really long, arduous process of trying to figure out why that mistake had happened. And long story short, what he realized was that the world, which everybody up until that point had thought was flat, was actually curved. And because of the way that it's curved, the sun's rays hit people on it in different angles. Now, that idea, that singular weird idea, right? Everybody thinks the world is flat, and here is a person telling us it's not. It's a globe, was bizarre. And he thought it was a perfect circle and all these things that we now know are different. But the point that I want to make is, in relatively short instances in our history as humans, we have made huge shifts in how we see the world. So Aristophanes is what led to Copernicus being able to understand that the world does not revolve around the earth, but rather that the sun is in the center, and later on to navigational tools and all this kind of stuff. And you know, when I give this presentation sort of here in the US at some talk, I talk about how, you know, Columbus wouldn't have been able to navigate. They used to literally think that if you sail out far enough, you'd drop off the face of the earth. And you know, the UK has, you know, the Navy and navigation are some huge parts of the history of the UK in general, and a lot of that would not be possible without this seemingly simple discovery. And sometimes it's hard to know ahead of time how a seemingly simple little discovery can affect our history. And I want to tell you that I got into this work because of my own history, because of the experiences that I've had in my own past and the struggles that I've had. But the thing is, I wasn't looking for a new world. I wasn't looking to change the way everybody thought about anything. I just tried to feel normal. And I don't know how many of you can relate to it. I mean, I see some of your comments here in terms of being able to get long periods of abstinence or getting things under control, but then everything goes awry. My whole life was awry. My entire life consisted of heavy, heavy alcohol, marijuana, and other drug use for years. Pretty much from the moment I was 16, or it started when I was 14, but from 16 to 25 and late 20s, I was inundated with alcohol and drugs. The only reason it stopped was because I got arrested. And not the first time, but the fourth time is when it made a difference for me. And when I had to take a pause, I had to really take stock of what was going on in my life, because if I didn't correct it at that moment, everything would have fallen apart. I was looking at decades in prison. I mean, it was bad. It was a really, really bad moment in my life. And I did the only thing I knew how to do, and that was I dealt with each kind of extreme situation, each problem in its own right, step by step by step. And for me, that meant starting out in pretty traditional rehab. And that traditional rehab taught me what, I don't know how many of you have been to one of these, but if you've ever been to an AA meeting, and obviously you've heard of AA meetings, it taught me essentially what people get in AA meetings, that I'm an addict and an alcoholic, and that's why I will struggle with this forever. And that's just something I was born with. I will never get away from it, and that is my life. Has anybody heard that before? I'd love to, maybe some likes or something like that, if you've heard those sorts of ways of thinking about your struggles before. Yeah, right. I mean, those are the most common ways we get talked about it. Now, I was facing such dire circumstances that I went along with it. And I went along with it because I thought I had no choice. And I would show you pictures right now, if I could share my screen, of what my life looked like back then. It was miserable. So when I say I had no choice, it was like my lawyer told me, go to rehab and clean up, or you're facing decades in prison, and I did it. But the thing is that within a month, because I didn't buy into the entire system at all, within a month, I'd already relapsed. But I couldn't tell anybody in the treatment center. So I kept it inside for 2 more months. And for 2 more months, I went in and out of the groups, and I went to work during the day, and then I would sit there and lie to everybody, telling them that I got 2 months sober and 3 months sober, and I was dying inside. I don't know how many of you can relate, but lying to other people constantly, especially after hitting that bottom and my truth being revealed, was really terrifyingly miserable for me. I don't know if you can relate, but it was, if you can, I'd love to get some hands up or whatever, thumbs up, because this is my story, and that's what brought me to this moment. Now, it wasn't something that I'd planned on, but when I got eventually kicked out of that rehab because they tested me, I faced a really interesting moment, and it was, I'd spent so many years lying to everybody in my life. My dad called me on the phone that morning, and I had one more moment where I was going to lie to him, and I had a whole story lined up, and I was going to make up the story about why I was leaving the rehab that I had originally been in and why I needed to move forward. And in a split second, something in my head said, you know what, just tell him the truth. It's terrible, but just tell him the truth. And I did. And I felt this relief for myself, this bowling ball that was my stomach. The anxiety went away for a moment. And then my dad started screaming at me because I messed up royally. And he was yelling and screaming and saying, what's wrong with you? Why'd you throw away these 3 months? You're going to go to prison for all this time. And he ended this tirade with a singular question, and it was, what do you want me to do? What do you expect me to do right now? And that's the first moment that it dawned on me that my dad and anybody else couldn't help me, and I had to figure this out. And that's what I told him. I said, you know what? Don't do anything. I have to figure this out. This is my problem. And that took me on, this is 15 years ago, but it took me on this journey. Now, I didn't stop drinking and using. I did for another 2 weeks as I kept looking for sober living or rehab or something to take me back in. And it started this road that led me on a 3-year sobriety journey. And the most traditional sobriety journey to start out, back to AA meetings, back to all those things, because at that moment I knew I had no choice. I had to get this right, and that was the only thing that was being offered to me. But when I found myself 1 year sober, I had to go to jail because all that stuff actually caught up with me. I had to spend a year in jail. So when I got out of jail, I had 2 years sober. And then I got out of jail and I tried to get work, and I couldn't get work because I had messed up so badly before. And so for another year, I was sober, looking for something to do. 6 months of that, looking for work, couldn't get hired anywhere. And eventually I did the only thing that I know how to do, and that was going back to school. And honestly, I don't know if you all can relate to this, because I don't know how this works in the UK, but school was my only option because they didn't ask me if I'd been convicted of a crime, and all the jobs did, so they wouldn't call me back. And I went back to school having no idea what I was going to study, other than that I was going to go back to the field I came from, psychology. And the long and the short of it is that within about 6 months of going into school, I started studying addiction, almost by mistake. The advisor I was working with was doing work on HIV and hepatitis C and all these things, and I started working with addicts. I started working with other people who were in the situation that I'd just been in, and it clicked for me, and I knew that I had found my purpose. The thing is that right at the same time as I was actually studying the research, the science behind addiction, something else became really clear to me, and that was the treatment that I'd been getting and the science around addiction didn't match at all. In the science, they talked about all these risk factors and protective factors and treatment approaches and the neuroscience. And in treatment, I was told to let go and let God and go to a meeting if I felt like using. And I went to my family and I said, you know, I think there's another way, and I'm going to go find out. And I planned with them for 6 months, and it was scary as hell. Again, I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but it was scary because everybody was telling me there's only one way to do this, and if you don't go that way, you're going to end up dead in institutions like jail or back in rehab. And I didn't want any one of those three things, but I knew there was another way. So I planned for about 6 months with my parents. I went through with my sponsor, and I worked through and all the studies that I was doing and everything like that. And then I took the plunge. And I'll never forget this moment. Again, if you can all relate, please let me know. I'm sitting next to my girlfriend at the time by the beach in Hermosa Beach here in California. And she used to like to sit around and drink champagne in the morning because she didn't work on the weekends, and she liked to just hang out. And I hadn't drank in about 3 years, a little more than 3 years, and I grabbed her glass of champagne and I had a single sip and I sat back. And I sat back because I had no idea what was going to happen. I was told that I was going to go back to my drug use and my heavy alcohol use and all those sorts of things immediately. So I was scared, even with all the studies, even with all the evidence and the work that I'd done, the research. I was really, really scared. But nothing happened. And I'm going to fast forward really, really quickly for you because I'm 12, 13 years after that moment right now, and nothing like what people scared me about happened. Now, to get that to be right, I had to do a lot of work. And over the last 12, 13 years, the steps that I've put in place in my life are what I created into Ignited Recovery. And Ignited Recovery is a thing that I want to talk to you about today because it's worked for me. It's now worked for hundreds and hundreds of other people in helping them beat any addiction they've had. So porn, sex, gambling, food, drug, weed, alcohol, anything. Because it rests on three principles, three secrets that I share with everybody that are completely antithetical to what the mainstream treatment industry does. And what it's allowed me to have in the meantime is what I like to call my extraordinary life. Not extraordinary, extraordinary. Because I always just wanted to feel normal. Back when I was 14, 15, and 16, and I was drinking just to temp down the anxiety that I was feeling around other people, and if I try to talk to girls, I just wanted to be normal. That's all I wanted. But I was told that was never going to happen. I was told I was different forever, and that was never going to happen. And my life now is the most ordinary that it could be. I have a family I love, an amazing relationship with my parents and my sister. My father's passed away, but by the time he passed away, we had the best relationship ever because I had done this work. And that's what I wish for all of you. There's just one main requirement that I'm going to tell you is there, and I just need you to understand it, because while it's true that the system has nothing to do with the other systems you've heard of probably primarily in life, and you have a great support in Club Soda, it is also true that once you find a system that speaks to you, you have to go all in. And when I say all in, I don't mean trying to dabble in it on the weekends when you feel like it. I mean giving it everything you have all the time. And that doesn't mean being perfect in it, but it means giving it everything you can all the time. Because that's what I'm going to do for you. That's what I do for my Ignited Recovery participants. That's what I do in my life, and that is what allows me to have my extraordinary life. So I want to talk a little bit about these secrets that have helped hundreds of people overcome their problems. And I just want you to take them in, understand them, and then apply them in your life. Does that sound like a good idea? Awesome. And yes, in the end, I'm gonna have a really special offer for you all. But you're gonna love it by the time we get there. So it's funny, right? I mean, I'm on here right now talking to you all, ex-addict, ex-alcoholic, whatever you want to call me. And over the last 12 years, because of these experiences, I've somehow weirdly become like this world-renowned addiction expert. That was never part of the plan. I write for Psychology Today. I've been on Dr. Oz and the doctors and CNN. I've given a TEDx talk. All these things have happened because of these changes in my life. And my passion now is to help other people and to be able to transfer these principles to other people's lives. And before I even tell you what Ignited Recovery is about, I want to give you this analogy that I always keep in my brain, which is traditional treatment, traditional rehab is to me like jail for addicts. Why? Because the idea is people with addiction are so damaged, they're so unable to do things that are good for them, that we have to take them away. We have to make them do things. We have to put them in a controlled setting for 30, 60, 90 days, or for this extended period of time. We have to take them away from their family and everything so that they can get right, because they're so damaged. They're liars, they're sociopathic, their brains are damaged, etc., etc. So even if it's really nice, even if the office you go to is beautiful and has really, really nice paintings on the wall, jail does not, by the way. Even if the rehab you go to has a beautiful pool and a jacuzzi, it's still like jail, because you don't get to decide what you want to do. You don't get to determine what meetings or what sessions you want to go through. Everything is determined for you because supposedly you're not under enough control. And if you do these things, if you commit to quitting and you take the time that you need off of work, which means you have to tell everybody in your life that you're screwing up, and you take the 30, 60, 90 days to go away to rehab, and you go to meetings every day, and you cut away all the temptations from your life, and you cut away all the tempting friends, and you eliminate any sense of risk and excitement from your life, because those things might make you want to use again. If you do all those things and you keep going to meetings and you go to rehab and you go to your therapist and all that kind of stuff, they promise you like a 10 to 20% chance of staying sober, which is their goal. And that made no sense to me. Even with 3 years sober, that made no sense to me, because the life I was living was not the life I wanted. The way I felt in my head was not the way I wanted to feel. And I didn't want to be sober if the rest of life felt like that. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but it felt debilitating, because I supposedly achieved success, but it didn't feel good. And that's not the point. The point is to actually enjoy life. And I was stuck because I felt like there was no other option. But now I found another way, and I can't share this with you, but I'm going to talk to you about the kind of it's four main underlying pieces that we have to go through. And the first one is changing beliefs, and that's a big piece of what I'm trying to do for you here today. I am now a social drinker. I was a terrible addict, drinker, weed smoker when I was in my 20s. I was told that where I am right now was not possible. And I'm going to tell you stories. Again, I'm sorry I can't share the screen with you, but if you go to ignitedrecovery.com, you'll get to see a lot of these stories in the replay of the typical webinar that I do. I'm going to share some of those stories with you. And the reason to share the stories is I need your brains to open up a window and understand that there is another way, another set of outcomes that are possible for you over and above what was told before. And I know you've heard that in the Club Soda group. So that's great, because you've already started on that. Now that's step one. Step two is, once you allow that into your brain, you have to go through a process that I call honest exploration. We all come with damage. All of us. Some of us have huge buckets of it. Some of us have small little, purses of it, clutches, right? But we all come with elements of ourselves that are bringing this about, that are bringing these struggles about. I break these down into 4 categories: biological, psychological, environmental, and spiritual. The thing is that we've always been told that addicts are all the same. It's bullshit. It's not true. Each one of us struggles with these things in these 4 different categories, but we struggle with different levels across these different things. And so we're going to end up needing different solutions. Honest exploration is all about figuring out where you are along these 4 levels. So once you've allowed the beliefs, it's about figuring out along these 4 different categories, where are your struggles? Now, once you've done that, the unfortunate reality, and some of you already know some of these things yourself, but once you've really dug into it, the unfortunate reality is some of that you're really not going to like. And it makes you feel really deeply ashamed. In my TEDx talk, I talk primarily about the shame part of this. So part 3 of our equation is radical acceptance. You are never going to be able to erase your past. That's not happening. Nobody has a time machine. You can't change the past. You will never be able to change it. And you won't be able to run away from it. You've been trying. So the 3rd step is to accept it. It's not easy, but with support you can do it. Once you get to acceptance, there's this release that happens to everybody who becomes what I call an ignited hero. Because all of a sudden, there's a realistic, relatively objective view of your life. And you get to see that it's not your fault, and you didn't fuck up, and you're not damaged, and you don't have character defects. You have a history and a brain and a body. And when you understand those things and you accept them, you're ready for the 4th part. And the 4th part is individualized transformation. The problem is that most treatment starts with individualized transformation. Individualized transformation is just about tools. What is it that can help your anxiety? What can help your depression? What can help your shame? All those things. Everybody puts that at the front end, but most of us are not ready to accept it. We're not prepared for that on the front end, so it all falls apart. But if you put it there, where I put it, as a 4th part of the equation instead of at the beginning, what happens is you're now realistically able to address these challenges in your life. And what happens is you create a different reality for yourself. And that reality is your new life. My new life. Happy family, work that I appreciate, a purpose in life, etc., etc. So that is the underpinning of this system, is actually flipping the equation. The tools don't come on the front end, they come in the back once we're ready for them. Ignited Recovery is like having a customized solution that is created especially for you and have it delivered using the best tools that were created by the best practitioners in the world and putting it to use daily, 24/7, 365 in your life across all aspects of your life and having it available forever. Whenever you need it, not whenever somebody else tells you you're supposed to have it. Now, it took me 15 years to discover it, but the whole reason that I do this over and over and over, day after day in my life, is because I want to be able to give you a shortcut. I want to be able to release you from all the pain, the cost, the experimentation that I went through and that you're going through right now in order to be able to get that success. And that's why I call participants in Ignited Recovery Ignited Heroes. Because it's bullshit that we are chronic liars who aren't empathetic and can't relate to other people and have damaged brains. It's just not true. But through confirmation bias and all these other terrible sort of influences from our environment, we've been taught that if you struggle with these issues, you're a weak, unmotivated, morally corrupt human being. And there are buckets of research, again, watch my TEDx, watch these other things, about showing us that if we take these beliefs on, we will start living them. So I want to start working through these 3 secrets with you. Secret number 1. Are you guys ready? Secret number 1. Okay. Secret number 1. Beating addiction is not about quitting, and it never was. Ever, ever, ever. It's a lie. Secret number 2. I'm going to talk to you about how to have the same resources that the best experts on earth use, but have them available to you 24/7 without having to have scheduling conflicts and therapists that go on vacation and, all of a sudden telling you, hey, actually, therapy has now gone up in price, etc. And then the 3rd one is how to create the exact support network you need to make all those changes stick in your life forever and stop fighting with your family, your spouse, or your kids about the right way to do this. So those are my secrets. The nice thing is because you're all part of Club Soda, secret number 3, you're already putting into your life. So you're ahead of the curve, which is beautiful. I love that. Okay, so number 1, beating addiction is not about quitting, and it never was. I'm going to prove it to you right now. How many of you have ever quit? How many of you have ever quit drinking? Everybody's quit drinking, right? I love this quote from Mark Twain. Quitting smoking is easy. I've done it hundreds of times. Quitting is fucking easy. It's not about quitting. It's about staying stopped. And all these other systems use that as evidence that addicts are that they're damaged. But I'm going to show you that that's not at all the problem. In addition, by focusing on quitting all the time, we make people lie. We make people lie all the time. And I'm going to show you why. So I went to, again, if you watch my, because I can't share my screen with you yet now, I'm going to walk you through this study. But I go to research conferences around addiction all the time. I've been doing research on addiction for 10 years. And there was a study from the University of Connecticut. And what the study looked at is it went into a drinking program, a rehab for drinking, and it fit people with a Scram X, those ankle bracelets that go on people's ankles. How many people know those things? So they went on and they did that. Now, during the study, they would ask people, did you drink? How many drinks did you have, etc. At the end of the study, they had a summary of everybody who said that they drank. In one condition of the study, 49% of people said that they drank. In another one, 37% said did, which made it look like in the second condition, the one with 37% drinking, really people did better, which was great. The researchers loved it, but there was a problem. They looked at the data from the ankle bracelet. Can anybody guess what percent of people actually drank in the study? When they looked in the ankle bracelet data, 96% of people in one condition and 97% of people in the other condition drank. They literally titled their study, "Most patients in outpatient clinics continue drinking during treatment." When we make the focus quitting, people lie. And they lie not because addicts are liars, but they lie because they know the answer they're supposed to give. And for social conformity and to be good to the people who are putting so much effort into making their life better, they want it to be true, even when they know they have an ankle bracelet on that can measure their drinking. I tried to quit 5 times on my own, and then I failed rehab once. By the way, with my parents paying about $25,000 for that 3 months in rehab where I was failing. Trying to quit kept fucking up my success because I was constantly failing, and that failure kept pushing forward this notion in my head that I'm going to quit forever and I'm never going to be able to make it, and I'm a loser. It kept reinforcing that. It kept making it worse and worse and worse. I had to rethink the entire approach that I had. The difference is now I have this system in my head. I have a system I've built that makes correcting my mistakes automatic. I have it built in. I don't have to wait until things get completely off kilter to fix things. And so I don't get blindsided. Or if I get blindsided, it's a tiny little blindsiding. I love people in my Ignited course when they talk about getting close to a relapse. A lot of times, by the time they're good at it towards the end of the course, they see a relapse coming weeks ahead of time. And because we do that and we have this system in place, we can deal with anything that life throws at us. So we don't get blindsided. Now, when I tell sober people in AA that this is a thing, most people tell me that they can't believe it and it's impossible, etc. They tell me it's a risk to tell alcoholics that they can drink. And I laugh because I go, have you ever told an alcoholic to stop drinking? And they say, yeah. I go, did it fucking work? And they say, no. Okay, well, that's great. You keep doing your thing and I'll keep helping people fix their problems. It's not about quitting, ladies and gentlemen. It never was. And the kind of methods that I'm going to talk about today, they fit regardless of whether you're a daily drinker or a binge user, or whether you're a closet drinker, like nobody in your life actually knows that you drink as much as you do, or if you stop for long periods of time and then go back on for a long period of time, if you've been struggling for decades, or this is your first time trying to get help. It works because it doesn't address the quitting or the substance. That's a symptom. And because I've built this course now, because I've built this system in place, it doesn't matter what the problem is you're dealing with, what it is. You just go back to that place in the system when you have an issue and you plug it in right there. And I want to talk to you through, so you heard my story, but I want to talk to you about a woman named Julia. And man, I wish that I could share the screen with you right now. Her testimonial is actually on the Ignited Recovery website. If you go to ignitedrecovery.com, you'll see it. But Julia came to me because she was successful. She was a coach and a consultant and an author, but she had been a heavy drinker for years, and she had done everything she could imagine doing to stop it. Everything she could. It just didn't work. By the time she came to me, she had exhausted all options, but she had heard from a friend that I do things differently. And so she came to me, she had heard about something called the Sinclair Method. How many people here know about the Sinclair Method? It's a method some people come to me for help with. She came and she said, look, I've been in therapy for years. I don't need therapy. I don't need more help thinking about my life. I just need help with the drinking. And I said, cool. She said, I've heard about this medication, naltrexone. I heard it can fix me. Can you help guide me through it? I said, sure. I said, I just want to be clear. I know you think you don't need anything else, but I'm going to fix your drinking. But once I fix your drinking, once we quit or greatly reduce, other stuff's going to come up and we're going to have to deal with it. She said, yeah, that's fine. Help me with the drinking. So we started out with the Sinclair Method. It took a couple of weeks to titrate everything and make things work exactly the way she wanted them to. But it worked. Just like I warned her, though, other stuff came up. And I'm going to bring her back up here a little bit later. But in a text, again, you guys can't see these screen shares, so please go to IGNTD Recovery and check this stuff out. But Julia now considers herself normal. This is actually a text from an email she sent me. We were corresponding in English. She said, thanks, Adi. It was 10 months ago that I met you. Since then, I've quit smoking, quit drinking, lost 20 pounds, and published a book. I started an online group with 160 women who follow along and love it, and I'm currently coaching 10 women one-on-one and changing their lives. Next step, write a TEDx talk and speak to bigger groups. Notice that other than the fact that she quit drinking, alcohol doesn't even make it into her equation. Why? Because she didn't fix her drinking, she fixed her life. I have another client that I love. His story I love because he was so resistant. He was so skeptical when he came to Ignited. His problem had to do with sex and porn and alcohol. So he cheated on his wife and all these, the relationship was on the outs. Now, he wouldn't deal with this all the time. It's not like he drank all the time and cheated on his wife on a regular basis, but he would go on these binges. And that's a big problem for a lot of people, inappropriate sexual activity or porn when they're drunk. He was so skeptical when he came to me, but his wife gave him an ultimatum. You go to rehab or do something to fix this or I'm leaving you. So he literally wrote me, I don't think this is going to do anything for me, but my wife gave me an ultimatum, so I'm going to try it. The thing is, he had managed to be sober even before he found me, sober both in alcohol and sex, for 10 months. And he had gone to 4 different therapists. I don't know how many of you can relate to this, going to therapist after therapist, for 4 different therapists during that first year. And what he said was this, and I'm quoting him, everyone told me I was an addict and a liar, and I'd always be an addict and a liar. If I was lucky, my solution was to work really hard so I could be a sober addict and a liar. I hated that mindset. It made me feel broken and worthless. That's why he was so skeptical when he came to me. He couldn't fathom another way of thinking of it. Now, he's been in the course now, I think this is his 3rd month, but this next quote is from a month in. And he said that once he applied the Ignited Recovery approach, he said, I'm having new conversations with my wife, and she, his wife, who gave him the ultimatum, has a new sense of possibility for our life together. The feeling of hope that he's gained has been the greatest gift he's ever received. Transformation is possible, and that belief is something I have to drill into your head, because whether it's my method or somebody else's, the vast majority of people with your struggle get better. You just have to find the system that works for you. In another email that he wrote to me, he said that the course and the weekly chats, along with the podcast that I do with my wife, have changed his life. No matter what your struggle is, beating it is totally possible. Now, I'm going to show you some of the ways to do this. And again, man, I wish I could do the screen share with you guys, but it's okay. Maybe if Laura will let me, I'll give you guys a link to some of the specific resources here. Because secret number 2, if you're ready for it, was how to have the same resources the best experts on planet Earth use and have them available to you 24/7 to provide you with your own personalized plan without scheduling conflicts, them going on vacation, or asking you for more money. And it's big, right? Because once you have the beliefs, that's great, and you believe you can get better. But then what do you do? Right? That's the next thing is, I believe, but what do I do next, right? So experts are important, but they're expensive. I know when I was going through my 15 years of transformation, I would have to pay for them. And sometimes it would be $250, $300 for a session. And even over and above that, the hard thing was you got to make appointments, and they're busy and you're busy. So how do you fit it in during office hours? And then they go on vacations and they leave you in a lurch and you don't really know what to do. But experts are important because they know what assessments to do, what questions to ask. Then they know what tools to apply. And through their experience, they can help you troubleshoot, right? That's the whole point, is they can say, oh, you did this that I told you, but here's the struggle that you're having. This is what I've seen work over time. Because the thing is, and please let me know if you struggle with any of these things, there are so many problems. I hope you now believe that beating addiction is not about quitting, But there are so many other problems. There's anxiety and there's depression. There's life stress. There's biology, right? All the genetics and the problems that you've brought into this equation because of what your parents put on you. Insomnia, self-esteem problems, attention issues, attachment, early kind of childhood development issues around relationships, trauma, that includes physical abuse, sexual abuse, and psychological abuse, divorce or some other loss like job loss or money loss, and boredom, right? There are so many problems that we have to struggle with. And where do we find help? That's why we go to the experts, because they've seen it all before and they know what to do. Now, have any of you actually looked online for any of these problems? Have any of you gone online and scoured the internet to look for your anxiety or depression or attention issues or insomnia or any of that kind of stuff? So many of the people that come to me have done that for years. They're just so confused. It's like drinking water from a fire hose. It just, you don't even know what to do. Before I did this, I went online and I looked at how to deal with depression on Google. There's 300 million results. 300 million. Who do you believe? Where do you start? So you feel even more lost because now you've looked for help, but there's too much. You don't even know how to sift through it. So that's why experts are important. Remember Julia, she came to me to just deal with the drinking. I gave her the warning, but once the alcohol came off board and she was able to not drink as much, her anxiety and her stress, self-esteem issues she never really realized she had, even with all of her success, came up. Like, she realized that when she was a kid, her dad and her two older brothers always made her feel like she was unmotivated, lazy, and worthless. So no matter how much success she had in life, she always had this image of her dad telling her, well, that's no big deal, or her brothers teasing her and making her feel like she was nothing. Success didn't matter. It was her own belief and her own way of viewing herself that she needed to change. So when these things would come up before we started working together, she would drink to forget the thoughts. We had to flip that equation. We had to put things in place in order to change her own belief about herself so that she could deal with that better. But once we did that and we dealt with each one of those beliefs one by one, gradually, that was one of the biggest tools that helped her. If you remember Dennis, the guy who just dealt with his porn and sex and alcohol problems, the thing that worked for him was totally different. So he came in and he knew he didn't really know how to engage in relationships, but he didn't understand why. And we did something. How many people here have heard of the Wheel of Life? He left me a message that I love. He said, he sent me a message that said, week 2 of the course really framed my life in a new light. After working through the exercises, I realized the areas of my life that I want to improve are completely different than what I anticipated. Once I came to that realization, it all became so clear. Now, let me remind you, he had been to 4 therapists over a year, but they all kept working with him on how to stop drinking and how to stop looking at porn. How many of you have heard about the Wheel of Life? Anybody? The Wheel of Life is this 8-slice pizza-looking thing that essentially helps you look at different areas, 8 different areas of your life. You know, your so physical environment, relationships, work, self-growth, all these sorts of things. I actually added 2 more slices to the IGNTD Recovery version of it. But what Dennis figured out was that he'd been living for 10 years of his life without an outside bigger purpose and without contributing greatly to society. Now, this is different for everybody. I'm not saying those are the solutions for you, but when he realized that, it completely flipped the way that he looked at his problem. But nobody else asked him those questions. Nobody talked to him about anything other than porn and sex and alcohol. Porn and sex and alcohol. He could like throw up the conversations that he had been having with these therapists about it because he'd known them so well. They all asked the same questions because they all want to focus on quitting. It's not about quitting. This is a message I really love from one of the people that came through the course. I love it because of how funny the first 2 sentences are. I went through module 1 last night. In 2020 hindsight, it's hardly a surprise that I ended up with a drinking and smoking issue. Also, after what I learned last night, it's not really a surprise that my other attempts to quit have been less than successful. This guy had been trying for years to quit, and a single module of just shifting the attention from the quitting helped him see things in a different light. Once you understand that there are different ways of seeing this, you'll never look at them the same. You just never will. So the reason you need experts is you need the assessments. You need the professional assessments like the audit for the alcohol and the wheel of life and these things that have been put in place for a while, and you need a system for how to use them, just like experts do. And once you have that system and you have it available to you whenever you want it, what's great about it doesn't matter what day it is. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. It doesn't matter how your therapist feels or what their cost is, or if their kids are sick or if your kids are sick. It's available to you whenever you want to apply. You just need a list of tools. And in Ignited Recovery, I give a whole list of tools. If you don't use my system, that's okay. You have to develop your own system and then stick to it. Okay. Secret number 3, the last secret, and then I love it because you guys, well, I want to leave some space for questions, but you guys are already part of this. And what I mean by this is this. A lot of the people who come to me tell me something like this. I don't want to talk to other people in my life about it because I'm really, really ashamed about my problem. Or my family has lost hope, so they don't want to listen to what I say about other things because they've lost so much hope that they don't even believe me when I talk to them about it anymore. Or I have current relationships in my life, but they're harmful. They're actually the ones that are causing me the problem. What do I do about it? Or everybody in my life wants me to go to rehab. I don't want to go to rehab, so it's constantly leading to conflict and fight. Or then another big one is I don't have anybody. I've messed up my relationship so badly in life that everybody's left me. What do I do now? And I got to tell you, I feel you, right? Doing this alone is really, really difficult. Having support is important, and you already have Club Soda, so you're already closer to the solution, which is amazing. In my own family, I came from a really good family, but the thing is, my parents, my mom and my dad, had no idea how to talk about emotions. They did not understand that emotions were even on the table. I have this funny story I tell people. But when I was going through my PhD program, my dad would call me every morning, and I was talking to him on the way. I have my backpack on, and I'm getting off the bus. I lived in the graduate housing here at UCLA, and I'm getting off the bus, and I'm walking to my class, and it was rough. I mean, I don't know how many people have done a PhD or a graduate program. The last few years are tough. And so I'm walking, and I'm not feeling all that great that day. And I'm talking to my dad, and I say this sentence as I'm about to walk into the building. And I say, you know what, Dad, I really feel like I'm going through a depression. And my dad's comment was, well, this isn't a really good time for depression. And I went, what? What do you mean it's not a really good time? Like, when exactly would be a good time for depression? No time is good for depression. Should I schedule it next week? Do you have a better time to fit in your depression? We have support in whatever form it looks like in our everyday life, but we need support that understands us. So Club Soda, therapists, clinicians, people in our world who support us in a way that is relevant is strong. But what I'm telling people all the time that work with me, sometimes we have to do the education for the people around us. The people in your life care about you getting better. They just keep hearing that the only way to do it is AA and rehab and all those other things. If you show them progress using another method, the fights will stop. Okay, so I've only got about 10 minutes left because I've got another workshop to do after this. So I want to open this up for some questions. But I just want to know, through that link, I have a special offer only for Soda members. I've never done this before. I probably will never do it again. But I'm going to keep it open for about 2 days. And I'm actually giving you guys 30% off of the Ignited Recovery program. And what that means is if you pay wholesale, it's a $697 cost for a $1,000 program. If you do it in payments, instead of 12 payments of $97, it's just 9 payments of $97. I've literally never done this, and what I include in this program is 15 years of experience, 15 years. So the Ignited Recovery Masterclass is in there. That's about an $8,000 program. All the assessment tools, so you don't have to wonder what questions to ask yourself. They're built into it. My group members actually told me in the past that they want tips and tricks. Like when the first day they come in for help, they need some tips and tricks, so I created that for them. There's another Facebook group for Ignited Recovery, the Ignited Heroes recovery group that you all get into from that. You also get a month, 4 weekly chats, live chats with me where I help you work through issues individually. All that is included for you because I've now made my calling, my purpose in life to help people beat this addiction forever. Lick it. Like, I mean, never deal with it again. Look at it as a past thing that happened in your life. And I know it's possible with the system, so I've built all these things in there. I wish I could share with you the screen grabs and the messages that I've had from the participants who've been part of Ignited Recovery, but I know this can work. I know it can work for you, and I know it can work for you in your life if you go all in and if you make that commitment. And what I've put together is it's literally about a $12,000 or $13,000 package worth of things that is normally $1,000, but for you guys, it's $600. I've never done it before. Like I said, it's going to be up for 2 days. So thank you, Laura, for getting out to the email. Today is May 6th. It'll be up until May 8th if anybody wants to sign up. And what I'd love to do is open this up for questions, because I know you have questions, and I'd love to, in 10 minutes, help as many people with as many specific struggles as you're having right now, so that you can make today the day you start beating your addiction. Thank you all for listening. Again, I'm sorry I can't share the screen. I would have loved to, but you get to see all that stuff if you go to ignitedrecovery.com. Thank you so much. I saw one question earlier, so I'm going to go back. Sarah, are you still on here? Is Sarah still on here? Yes, Sarah, how you doing? Okay, so you said you're back on day 2. I hope you listen to secret number 1. And secret number 1 is that it's not about quitting. And so forget day 2. I want you to focus on something completely different. When you say, I decided it's not a problem anymore, let me suggest that there's something a little bit different going on. It's not just that you decided that it's not a problem anymore. You decided that alcohol is still a good solution for a specific problem you're dealing with, even though in the past it backfired on you when you did it. So my question to you is, forget the alcohol for a second. What is the thing that makes you the next day, what the day before you're about to go drink, or the moment you're about to pick up the drink, what is the thing that makes you go, yeah, no, fuck it, alcohol is a good idea right now? What is that that's happening in your life? I want you all to, as I'm waiting for her answer, I just want you all to remember, it's not about the quitting. It's not about the drinking. If you keep trying to address the drinking, you're leaving the important core of the problem behind. And I don't care if the core is exactly stress, anxiety, wanting to fit in with your friends. I don't care what the thing is, but that's the addiction you got to get at. So stress, problems, and anxiety, if you don't address those issues, Sarah, the drinking will never take care of itself. And it's even worse, because if the drinking did take care of itself, you would find another problem to hang on. So what you need is to really break down, where's the stress and the anxiety coming from? Is it in your relationship? Is it in your job? Is it in your own way that you see your own life? Is it relationship with your parents? What is it that it's coming from? Forget the fucking alcohol. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can stop it. You know, Julia came to me to slow down her drinking, but then once she slowed it down, she actually decided she didn't want to drink at all when it got to another level. I need you to explain, where's the stress and the anxiety coming from? Because it can be biological, so there can be some intrinsic anxiety issues you've dealt with your own life. It can be environmental, there are people or jobs or relationships around you. It can be psychological, the way I see my world is different. Each one of those elements will have a different solution for you. You can count days if you want. And I'll introduce another idea as well, which is, don't only count consecutive days. Consecutive days is one fine way of measuring it, but the problem is that once you had one sip of alcohol, you're back to zero. What's the percentage of days sober that you have had in the last month? Start looking at your problem in a more wholesale way, instead of constantly looking at how many days sober you've had. My guess is that's adding stress to your problem. So what's the major source of stress and anxiety? Yeah, you're more than welcome, Sarah. Look, to all of you, you've tried quitting. You've tried moderating. The problem is everybody has told you that alcohol is the problem. It's not. It's not. Alcoholics are not different than normal people. They're just not. There's no science that shows it. It's ridiculous. We can't tell apart groups like that. We just can't. There's no specific set of genes that makes alcoholics. None of that stuff exists. Alcoholics is a term we have given to people who struggle with stopping alcohol. Some of them have fit in a cluster and they look like a specific group of people, but that's not true for everybody. Start understanding, start looking through that honest exploration part. What are the things in my life that I'm struggling with, that I'm dealing with alcohol? You fix those, and the alcohol won't be a tool anymore that you're using for coping. Um, I know it sounds simplistic, but that's the whole point of the Ignited Recovery course. So go to theabstinenceMyth.com, www.theabstinenceMyth.com. Download the first chapter of the book. As soon as it's out, I will send you an email so you can buy it too. Go to ignitedrecovery.com and watch the hour and a half, 2 hour version of this webinar with all the screen grabs and all the information. This can be the last year you struggle with this, guys. You don't have to walk around the rest of your life with this. I need you to get that through your head. It's worked for me. It's worked for hundreds of other people, and it can work for you. I want this to be the last year that you struggle with it. You've seen Annie Grace. You know of 1 year no beer. There are so many different tools. I have mine. Figure out the way that works for you and stop this bullshit struggle. You can do it. I know you can. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into this.